Right, last few days I've been spraying. I didn't film much of the spraying. I've just finished these, most of it's under there that's covered up. Here's the last few days of me talking to myself, mainly about MDF edges. Right, paint's arrived, so it's time to start spraying. This is Dulux Timeless, the primer, and the top coat, PU paint, it's a 2-to-1. They've coloured the primer, which I didn't want, but it's not that much more expensive, so it'll be okay. Mixing cup, be using that, 2-to-1, so 2 of them to 1 of the catalyst. I've got thinners there, and in the Dever Bliss here, I've got a 190 filter. Right, this is the MDF edges. I've just sanded it round, taken that corner off, gone down to 120 grit. I'll put a coat on that, you'll see that the edge will go prickly, and I'll sand that. I'll show you each coat, how it progresses. Right, that's the first coat of primer. Just covered the surface. You can still just see the green, but it's fairly smooth because I went over it with the 120 paper. But what I'll do now, sand that again with the 120. You want it smooth, even if you're removing the paint. Some of this first coat of paint will have soaked in, prepared the wood, made the fibres stand up. So you want to sand that smooth again. And the pine stuff, you can see here there's what they call dead knots. They're the ones with the black ring around the outside. A few more there. They're the ones that will bleed through. But with the PU paint, doesn't seem to do that. And the man at the shop says so. You can see there's a what they call a live knot. They're the ones that look like they're good. They're the ones that don't have the black ring around them. You can see down here. So what I'll do is fill them, see how they show up against the white primer. There's a split here that's resin in it. They tend to weep, so I'll fill that. I left one of the frames on here. There's going to be a skirting cover in this, so I'm not worried about that. But I'll go around. Give them another sand, give them another coat. Right, these are the cover strips, the architrave strips that are going to go up the side. See the MDF showing there, prickly on the edge. So I'll sand that off with a 120. So I've sanded that off. You can see it looks like I've removed all the paint, but it'll have prepared the wood. I put the second coat on, probably have to sand it again. And these sheets of ply, fairly good sheets, these ones. See, the paint's just covered. I'm only going to go over it with the 320, I think it is in this. Same with the Beech, it's quite smooth. Don't know about the pine, might do 120 on there, maybe 320. Might just do 320 on the surface of here. Depends, I want a very flat finish, so we'll see how far I go with that. These stains sometimes can bleed through the pre-cap paint. I think it's the solvent in it, dissolves it and they bleed through. Same with Sharpie marker pens and the knots. I said, I spoke to the man in the shop. I asked him about knot stopping solution, stuff like that. He says, oh, I don't think you'll need it with the primer, with the PU I mean. So I'm going to see if this covers. I think it does. I think it has done in the past, but I can't remember. But sometimes they show through, so if that shows through, I'll just use this as the baseboard for the cupboard. Put it underneath. I've got all these knots to fill, all these dead knots, the ones with the black ring round the outside. Sand it first, otherwise your scraper's trying to go over lumps and bumps. Same with anything. Sand it, then fill it, blow out the dust. Then once I've filled it, I'll put a pencil line around it, like that. Because it's very easy to miss when you're doing white paint with a white fill. It's very easy to miss a bit, and then you've got to sand it later, which means you might be sanding off the primer again. So just highlight them, then you remember to sand them next time. Put a bit of filler in them. So like I say, circle them. That one's already got circle. But you see there's a little one there. Could quite easily miss that, and then that filler will show. So one there, didn't fill that. It's a little bit of little split. Missed that just then, you see. So circle that, circle that, circle that, circle that, circle that. So when I come back to sanding, I'll know where they are. Right, I'm sanding the doors. And I've tried different ways. I've tried squeezing these panels into the grooves in the stiles and rails, squeezing them quite tight, but that's not satisfactory. It's a bit awkward when it comes to gluing them together. You get this little black gap around here. It's not so bad on coloured doors, you don't really see it, but on pale doors these are going to be almost white. You see a black line, I don't like that. I've tried putting a chamfer on the back edge of the panel, so as it goes in it squeezes up to the front here. That doesn't really work either, you still end up with a black line. So what I'm doing is going around with some filler, squish it in, and then I've got a sponge there in water, wash it off. And it worked before, so I'm hoping it's going to work this time. The paint doesn't fill it up, even if you spray more and more on it, just doesn't seem to fill up the gap. And there only seems to be one useful tool for this: fingers. Squish it right in there. I might have to clean the corners out with a chisel later, but we'll see. I've watered this down a little bit. I've got just enough in just to fill that little gap. It's got PU primer on it, so the water shouldn't affect it. Right, I'm sanding these off. Filler's dry. 120 paper in a new block that I forgot I had. But I'm going to sand that flat, even if I take the paint off the paint here, even if I take the paint off the wood here. But you got to get that absolutely flat. It might feel flat, but sometimes if you catch it in the right light, you can still see the outline. You see I've sanded that. I've gone through the paint. You see the amount of dust that's created. That's why I put a pencil line around things. You see there, that's that knot that I put in, nice and flat. Didn't have to try and mould it onto the edge of a board. That should just disappear now. Right, back to these MDF tops. This sandpaper has like a grain, so if you're not careful you leave lines in it. So you have to sand at an angle. You see I'm just touching the edges a bit too much there. You see how the primer goes white. It's the first coat still this. So I'm trying to use the corner there to get inside. I'm going to do these edges, this edge and the corners with the 320. The soft side of the 320 on these edges here. So you take the paint off, but next coats will be right. Right, I've sanded that off. Went over it with the 120. Still feels a little bit rough. I think I'll still have to sand it a little bit. I went over with the 120 first, get it smoothed, and then polished it off a little bit with the 320. But the next coat should go on better. That first coat's done its job, prepared the wood. There's the second coat on. Don't know if I can get it on film, but it's pretty much covered. There's a little bit of feathering, a little bit I can feel, but once I've sanded that off, you can almost just see the green still showing through. The first coat was quite thin, and I did sand it back quite a lot, so this is only really the second coat, the first coat really. But it's going to get primer on the underside, 2 coats on there, so that'll get another couple of coats on it. And then by the time the top coat goes on, it should be fine. Right, everything here's had 2 coats of paint now, but I sanded some of these back where the knots were, and you can see the grain showing through. Some of the knots can still be seen, little bits here and there. And some of it, like I say, where I've sanded it, it's only really had 1 coat because I sanded off most of the first coat. These I'm going to leave till tomorrow, so I'm going to spray the other side. But everything else I'm going to give a 3rd coat to, just a final coat. And these panels, these doors, you can sort of see the green, showing through. This paint, you know, all paint is translucent to a degree. And if you catch it in the right light, you can sort of see that the panels are slightly different. There's a shadow on that one. Be alright once it gets top coats on, but before I go to sleep, I'm going to put a 3rd coat on. Then they'll be dry, ready to turn over tomorrow. Do the primer on the other side. And here's that stamp mark. See a little pencil mark I put on. It's had 2 coats, but it still hasn't gone away. You've got a bit of open grain there as well. Give it another coat. Right, I've just got one more door to do after this. Just thought I'd mention that I always sit the pieces I'm spraying on a little block of wood so the block doesn't come over the side. So when you're spraying, you don't get paint on that block of wood. Several blocks of wood for whatever size I need. Gives me access to sand the edges. All pencil marks, pen marks are going to be erased by the paint. This is where the hinges are. The hinges are spaced almost identically top and bottom, so that I know which way round they are. I put a little drill hole at the bottom of the hinge side. Originally there was a H mark up there, so I know that that one's the left one, and on the right one I did the same. Everything's had 3 coats or 2 coats in some cases, like I say, where the knots were. See the grain's going away a little bit now, pretty much gone. These MDF edges are pretty flat. I gave them an extra coat. I had a bit of spare paint, so they've had 3 coats. Remember that first coat I sanded right back, so they've had sort of 2 coats of proper paint on. But they'd be ready for primer, for top coat now. I'm going to spray the other side, so they're inevitably going to get a bit more. But 3 coats, that's all it needed. Right, that's the first coat of primer on this side. These edges have had nearly 4 coats now. 3 if you don't count that first one that I practically sanded right back. I'm gonna clean out the spray gun, just give it a quick wash. You can't leave it in there in this weather. So I'm gonna fill any little holes that I need to on these. Leave that to dry, and then later on I can get some more primer on them. 2 or 3 coats. This is the underside, so probably just another coat on those. The pine, you see, I'm going to fill and end up sanding again, so they'll get 2 or more coats. Right, I've cleaned it out a little bit by putting my finger over the end and bubbling it. It's clear now. I like to leave a little bit of thinners in. That'll sit on there for a little while till I've filled and sanded. Then I'll spray that little bit of loose stuff. So if there's any paint left in there, any residual paint left in there, that solvent will keep it soft. Right, it's evening now, about 7 o'clock. I'm going to see if I can get some top coat on these. Most of these are laid on the face, so I'll be spraying the backs. Same with these. This is the underside. It's going to give a coat to seal it. These edges, I've had about 5 coats now because I've given a couple of coats there. The face had about 3 coats. They would have been fine with the 3 coats that I put on the face. And on each coat I'm going to get it wiped down with one of these abrasive pads just to help remove the dust and any little nibbles. And hopefully there won't be anything that I've missed. If there is, I'll just sort it out with sanding pads. 320 probably. I shouldn't have to go back to the 120 now. There should be very little dust now. It's been a few hours since I did the primer, so after this first coat, when I've blown off any dust from the primer, it should be fairly dust free, so I just be able to get on with the top coats. I bought, this stuff comes in kilos, not litres. This is the primer. There's only half a litre, if that, in there. Half a kilo, I guess they call it. I'm going to save that for doing the skirtings. I used half a kilo, half a litre, a cupful, let's put it that way, of that old primer that I had. So far, to do both sides of that lot, 3 coats on each side, it's taken about 5 litres. It's 5 kilos, it comes to about there in the tin, but once you add the catalyst, which is 2.5 litres, brings it up to there. Or in theory it would do. So this is the top coat, same mix, 2 to 1. It's a satin finish, so it'll be matte, a matte finish. Looks the same, it's just not as powdery when it goes on. So there should be a lot less dust. Need to mix, give it a shake, but that goes on quite nice, does that stuff. Seems to colour better as well, seems to cover any marks or knots showing through or anything like that. So I'll do that. Like I say, 2 to 1, so 2 of them to 1 of the catalyst, and I'll thin it down a little bit with the thinners. So got our 2 mark there, we're going to go up there with the catalyst. That'll give us 2 to 1. I'll mix that up and then probably top it up to about here, says there 10%, 20%, 30%. I'll probably come up to 20% or something with a bit of thinners. Right, I've got 190 filter again, and I can tell how thick it is by how fast it goes through the filter. I should be able to pour it fairly steadily and it flow through the filter fairly steadily. If the filter starts filling up, then it's too thick. Pour it out, put it back in the cup, put a bit more filler, put a bit more thinners in. That cup's full now. That's why it's not going through the filter. So that's 1 cup full. Put the lid on, make sure it's tight. Make sure that hole in the top's not blocked. Otherwise you'll be spraying but nothing will come out and you think you've got a blockage. You have to strip it down, pour the paint out, only to realise that it's just that hole that's blocked. I'm going to be doing a couple of mixes, so as I'm tight, I just rinse out my filter a little bit, and then that thinners that's gone in there will go towards the next mix as the thinner. Right, the doors, the tops and the shelf boards, they've all had 3 coats, and the front frames. So I'm going to stack everything that's had 3 coats on there, cover it up, find a clean dust sheet, cover it up. So as you can see, there's a lot of dust around now. What I'm going to do is put the shelves together, and then the joints where the shelves meet the uprights, I might want to just put a little bit of filler in there, just fettle them a little bit. I'll give it all another coat once it's all assembled. You can see the faces of these. They've had several coats of paint because I sprayed both sides, but they would have been fine after the first 3 coats of primer that went on. First coat of primer I sanded right back, and then another 2 coats, and then it's had about another 3 coats of top coat. So you see, you don't need sealers and things like that. Just thin down your first coat, sand it back smooth. And see the doors where I filled up around the edges. There's a white line, that's just the light, I think. Bring it into the light. They look quite nice, they feel quite nice as well. This is one of them MDF strips. Don't know if it'll focus, but it had about 3 coats of primer. I sanded that edge off on the first coat, and then it's had about 3 coats of top coat. And if it'll focus, that's as smooth as the face is now. Right, I've screwed this shelf together, just gluing screws in the groove. It's come out pretty square, but if it wasn't, I'd put a brace on it. I might still do that anyway, just for transport. But for now, I want to tidy these joints up. So there's a little gap. It's not bad. And some of these are quite good, but you see there's like little notches there. So what I'm going to do is rub some filler in these. These only got 2 coats of top coat. I did that for that reason, so that I could fill these bits. Just check it over, make sure it went together okay, and then I'll give these a coat of paint. It's a bit awkward getting the spray gun in there, it only just fits. And when you spray into corners, you got the fan hitting the corner. Some will be hitting here, some will be hitting there. That'll be reflecting off, and the paint trying to get into the corner is blown away by these 2 fans. So what I'll do is I'll narrow the fan, the spray fan, and reduce the pressure a little bit so that the paint can get into the corners there. Otherwise you just end up with a line that doesn't have paint and you get loads of paint on here and there. But I'll do that, I'll tidy it up, give it a coat of paint. This is that stamp mark, that stain. It's gone. This has had 3 coats of primer, 3 coats of top coat. That's my little mark that I put on. And it's gone. Same with all the knots in this. I filled this, so I'm gonna give it a wipe down with that abrasive, just to remove any surface filler might be still on it, and give it a coat. I've got to cover all these up first. Alright, that's all been sprayed. I'll leave that over the weekend now, and hopefully be fitting it all on Monday.